The thing that I find very interesting about game journalists who are ideologues is that when they're doing their journalistic works in action, they're gonna make sure that their ideology is put front and center. They will make you to know how far they've gotten their ideology, and anyone who even slightly detracts from when they land in the political spectrum will be considered heretics. Today's video is about an interview on Cyberpunk 2077, the upcoming sci-fi video game by CD Projekt Red, famously known for the critically acclaimed and commercially successful Witcher series. This game really cannot escape from the hooplas, can it? The interview is started by Eurogamer. What you need to understand about this interview is that it is influenced by ideology. The interviewer asked questions that nobody is interested in other than himself and the far-left activists that cheer up on this topic. Speaking of interview, this isn't the first time I talked about an interview article from Eurogamer. I think the first time I talked about it was in November 2017, where Eurogamer straight up grilled David Cage by asking him about the questions in the depiction of domestic abuse in Detroit Become Human, rather than many important things that the players want to know. So considering the previous interview style, I expect this one to be just as grilling and off topic as the last one. Even though it's from a different interviewer, the grilling and off topic is still there.
The big Cyberpunk 2077 interview. CD Projekt on transhumanism, gender fluidity, and what's beyond Night City's walls.
Now you might be thinking, who the hell cares about gender fluidity? And you're pretty much in agreement with at least 99% of the world's population, considering how small the people who identify as either trans or non-binary in this entire world. Now this wouldn't have been a problem if this is a topic that the game developers tackle in the game, but the thing is, well, it's like interviewing a soccer player about his experiences in playing basketball. Okay, both sports involve a player and a ball, but there are significant differences between the two sports that you can't just do that and expect results. And that's the key confusion that occurred between the interviewer and the interviewee. The two people have different views in what they consider to be transhumanism. The interviewer considers transhumanism to be the evolution of human beings' gender identity. The developer, and pretty much anyone else on planet Earth, considers transhumanism about the evolution of human beings anything else. To be more accurate, transhumanism is the belief or theory that the human race can evolve beyond its current physical and mental limitations, especially by the means of science and technology. When we think about transhumanism, we think about cyber augmentations. We're thinking about mechanical enhancements of our biological functions. How are we going to use the technologies of the future to evolve our biological functions? It's one of the fundamental questions of sci-fi, and of course it's one of the key components in the theme of cyberpunk. It's what makes sci-fi and cyberpunk interesting and compelling. However, the interviewer is going to merely focus on the evolution of humans' gender identity, which isn't really what Cyberpunk 2077 is focusing on. And that's why later on you will see that the developer is awkwardly trying to answer the questions. I don't think the current evolution in humans' gender identity is going to last very long. Even in current year, the idea of gender identity evolution, like for example being a person who identifies as non-binary, is 1. Not popular, 2. Not widely accepted, and 3. Highly impractical. Seriously, imagine being a person who doesn't have a gender identity, so they just either make up new genders as they go along or swap genders every day. I'm dead serious, there are people who do this. I think they call them gender fluid, but gender fluidity, as far as I know, is about feeling like a guy or a girl, rather than identifying as a guy or a girl, or especially identifying as gender fluid itself. I'm gonna call these people gender evolutionists, who complicates things and refuses to be in either of the gender. So to all these gender evolutionists, what do you think is gonna happen in the future? Do you think people are going to abide to your rules? Or do you think that people will stay the hell away from you as far as possible? Now, I'm not saying that people cannot abide to the rules of these gender evolutionists. They absolutely can. How? By giving those gender evolutionists a position of power. The only way for you to make these people to abide to your rules is through dictatorship, authoritarianism, indoctrination, and perhaps even genocide. Sure, we can dive into a futuristic dystopia where language and people's words are being monitored 24/7 just so that we can conform it to the established social norms so that we don't offend a bourgeois gender evolutionist, but is that what Cyberpunk 2077 is going for? I don't think so. And I don't think that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to depict these gender evolutionists in a positive light. That is, if they have them at all. Anyway, we haven't started to read the interview yet, so let's start to read the interview. But before that, just a quick shout out to my new patrons, Omega Kyo, Hal 9000, and Kirinochi. You guys are fantastic.
Since its initial announcement at E3, excitement around the game has been tempered somewhat, as fans of the genre have begun wondering how accurately CD Projekt Red will reflect the diverse classes and characters options of both the original Cyberpunk 2020 pen and paper game, or how it will deal with topics such as transhumanism that are at the heart of the cyberpunk genre in general.
The writer starts off being completely disingenuous here by characterizing what fans wonder about. Now sure, they will care about the diverse classes and character builds, but do they really care about transhumanism, or your definition of transhumanism, which is mostly about gender evolution, as in something that only bourgeois far leftists care about?
A recent, now deleted tweet from the developer which referenced a transphobic meme did absolutely nothing to help matters.
Oh my god, I've talked about this in another video and I still have no idea why that tweet is transphobic. If you guys missed it, it's a tweet saying, "Did you just assume their gender?" Yeah, try to make sense in how that tweet is about the fear of trans people. I find it even more baffling that there are people who are like, Cyberpunk is about being nice. I'm sorry, what? Cyberpunk is a genre centered around dystopian futuristic noir. To say that Cyberpunk is about being nice is like saying Mad Max is about having a birthday party. And thus, the interview began. The first question starts off with the interviewer talking about the demo and how he was disappointed that one of the choices that he made in the game didn't really make any difference. The developer said that there will probably be more options and outcomes in the final product. The second one is about the writer noticing that regardless of the gender that you pick the main character V is, they will always wake up with a male companion, to which the developer answered that they're going to show different kinds of relationships and players will be able to choose what kind of characters they play. The third question is when the writer is slowly approaching the Stargate towards the off-topic universe. At first, the writer asks how far will the character creation go, which the developers say that while it's still in development, it does reflect the general intention of what the final game would be. But then...
I asked because the option in it is to play as a male or female character type. If someone wanted to choose a character who was gender fluid, how would you portray that?
No surprise that the game developer tries so hard to awkwardly answer that question. Seriously, how can you answer that? The writer doesn't define what a gender fluid is and just assumes that the game developer knows. Now, these ideas of gender fluidity or non-binary are based on the notion that people's behaviors are in some ways gendered. So gender fluid people or non-binary people are basically not men but not women either because they don't act or sound or behave or feel like either. But a lot of it is based on actions and behaviors. If you're a woman and you behave like a man, you're still a woman. Some people might call you manly, but you don't have to immediately change your identity or something. Reminds me so much of Anime News Network's take on Kino's journey. I talked about that in another video. My point is, you really need to define what being gender fluid means. Don't just throw that away and expect answers. And even if you can define what gender fluid means, it will be a nightmare to produce a game with a gender fluid character, because the gender fluidity of that character might not be accurate to gender fluid people in general. You know what? Screw that. How about you start talking about the actual game?
I didn't write it down when watching the demo, but are they labeled male and female in there currently?
Oh my god, writer, who cares? Can you please ask questions that are stupider than this? Sorry, I misspoke. I mean less stupid, don't you dare!
Beyond the aesthetics, could you choose to have a different pronoun? Is that an option in the game?
Lord, reveal your salvation, since I am your favorite among these heathens.
I really should use more Ghost Stories clip. They're a really nice break out of this entire insanity. 1. Who cares? 2. Asking the developers in the options of different pronouns is gonna be a last-minute voice acting script-changing nightmare. Now, since V can be either male or female, then we can assume that the voice actors have recorded their lines in neither situations, and the in-game scripts correspond to those pronouns. But if you ask the developers to use they or they, I don't want you to just demand them. I want you to actually finance them, and also delaying this game even further. As far as I heard, you far-left activists are incredibly rich, so if you want to make a change, you better freaking spend that money. And free? Who cares? The developer awkwardly answers the question by saying, well, we're kind of aware of it, I guess. Which is the best answer that I can think of for this situation, because the interviewer just went in with this really stupid question that only far-left progressives and gender evolutionists care about. Again, I say gender evolutionists because I don't want to lump in the trans people that are actually sensible and knows that the world doesn't always revolve around them. These gender evolutionists are 100% narcissistic sociopaths.
I know plenty of fans who would appreciate that, and after all, you have a main character with a name that doesn't specify any gender.
I am pressing this button as much as I can for that horrendously wrong statement. Plenty of fans would appreciate that. This is some IMAX level projection. Nobody in this world cares about whatever these gender evolutionists talk about. The only people who care are these gender evolutionists themselves. Nobody else. Because it's impractical. It makes zero sense. And every single one of these gender evolutionists are a bunch of people with mental disorders related to narcissism and sociopathy. Finally, the writer decides to talk about something more important. Cyberpsychosis, as in too much cybernetic implants will cause damage to your biological systems. The developer is not certain that it will be part of the player, but if it is, it will essentially lead to game over if you use it too much.
There are lots of futuristic video games which deal with dystopian futures and big corporations being the bad guy. Fewer deal with transhumanism. Where does Cyberpunk 2077's focus lie?
Oh my god, writer, let's define transhumanism. It's the belief or theory that the human race can evolve beyond its current physical and mental limitations, especially by the means of science and technology. Actually, it would be more accurate to say that almost every sci-fi game deals with transhumanism. And sure, some of them don't focus on these as much as others, but they do deal with this topic, and they're either smaller topics or bigger topics depending on the game. Again, the writer's definition of transhumanism is wrong. It's not about the evolution of human beings' biological functions or mental capabilities. Transhumanism, duh, it has trans, therefore we're talking trans people, right? I got it, I can finally write something smart. The rest of the interview actually talks about more important things like the setting, the RPG elements, the open world components, but man, there are so many incredibly off-topic and completely non-relevant questions that the interviewer talks about that makes me want to keep pressing the wrong buzzer. How can you spend most of your interview talking about the most non-relevant crap? Nobody cares about your transhumanism, or more accurately, gender evolution. That's what it is. It's not transhumanism, it's gender evolution. Transhumanism refers to the enhancements of human beings' biological capabilities through technology. Imagine what happens if you enhance your body with nanotechnologies, mechanical augmentations, biotics, or perhaps even merging yourself with a power armor. Your health and body are so damaged that the armor is literally the only thing keeping you alive. These are all very interesting topics to cover. You can create something badass, something fun, something entertaining narrative-wise and gameplay-wise. Gender evolution, on the other hand, refers to human beings in recognizing and identifying different gender paradigms that evolve beyond the binary choice of male and female. And by human beings, I mean far-left progressives, because they're literally the ones who recognize them, and they're gonna teach people that their ideas are great. Any normal human being recognizes that there are only two genders. I can't believe that we're living in a time where saying that can be so controversial. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna test out my neo-augmentations. Better apply for this, you filthy purists.